CGI is the secret sauce behind so many of your favorite movies and TV shows, and without the special effects, they're kind of hard to recognize.
From apocalyptic landscapes to Walton Goggins' schnozzhole, Amazon's Fallout series boasts some serious CGI magic, but the line between practical and visual effects might be finer than you'd think. The first season of Amazon Prime Video's Fallout adaptation follows several heroes and villains who are still working to understand their strange world. Walton Goggins' movie star character, Cooper Howard, slowly comes to realize that corporate America is making up an apocalypse to sell back to itself, while Brotherhood of Steel squire, Maximus, quickly learns that the powerful men he idolized as a kid aren't all they're cracked up to be. It's vault dweller Lucy, though, who gets the biggest reality check when she leaves her underground dwelling to explore a ruthless surface world with no place for her chipper sense of entitlement.
Okie dokie.
Given these themes, it seems fitting that it's just as hard to tell what's real and what's not behind the scenes of Fallout. As the show's visual effects supervisor, Jay Worth, told FX Guide, "We got the footage back after the first day, and we couldn't tell where the practical set ended and the virtual one began." Though the series shot much of its action in locations such as Utah and Namibia, much of these settings were enhanced through the use of massive, immersive LED digital sets known as volumes. First made popular by The Mandalorian, digital volumes have taken Hollywood by storm in recent years. Fallout employed LA-based company Metropolis to make the show's giant digital screens, which were built during the COVID-19 pandemic with the help of 37 Metropolis employees, as well as the show's art and visuals departments. Unlike other productions that have used these giant dynamic 3D sets, Fallout didn't require a lot of post-production adjustments to the initial footage. Walton Goggins recently told IGN, "I thought I was going to be looking at a f***ing green screen for 9 months. It's not. They built it. It's all tactile. It's all tangible, man." The underground vaults in which Lucy and the other vault dwellers live also employs volumes from Metropolis, but you're actually supposed to notice these ones. Bright and vibrant shots of cornfields form the backdrop to Vault 33, which are clearly meant to evoke the feeling of a summer's day in Nebraska. They're uncanny and obvious by design, unlike the volumes that were used by the film's crew. And while the sound stages of Fallout might create impressively realistic backdrops for the show's post-apocalyptic action, one bit of CGI is slightly more noticeable: the ghoul's nose, or lack thereof. As an irradiated survivor of nuclear bombing kept in one piece by mysterious vials of liquid, Goggins' character has a dark hole in the spot where his schnoz once was. A recent featurette from Amazon Prime Video includes a quick shot of Goggins on set, which reveals that his nose was entirely digitally erased. Despite the obvious use of CGI on the ghoul, much of Goggins' look was achieved practically, with the help of a makeup team led by prosthetic department head Jake Garber. Garber was nominated for an Oscar for his work on Star Trek First Contact, and has worked on everything from The Walking Dead to The Righteous Gemstones.
Jake Garber is one of the best special effects makeup artists in the world.
Of course, executive producer and longtime Fallout fan Jonathan Nolan is no stranger to complex visual and practical effects after co-creating Westworld. In the Amazon Prime Video featurette, he seemed impressed with the level of versatility to Goggins' prosthetics.
The makeup was thin enough that you could still see all of the expressiveness of his performance.
Around the time of the show's release, Goggins also posted a time-lapse of the makeup process on his Instagram, a process that originally took around 5 hours to complete, before Garber and his team whittled it down to about 2. At one point, the makeup actually got a bit too real for Goggins' own comfort. As he told IGN, he once took a nap in front of a mirror in his trailer while shooting in Namibia, and startled himself when he awoke to see his own face. Goggins recalled, "I was like, oh my god, damn, I scared the shit out of myself is what I'm saying." Now that's what we call movie magic.
Epic vistas, underwater hijinks, and a man we all really believed could fly. What does your favorite sci-fi movie look like without those iconic special effects? Directed by Stanley Kubrick and released in 1968, 2001: A Space Odyssey is still renowned to this day for its groundbreaking special effects.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
The film's most iconic moments involve visually stunning depictions of space travel, from the blue Danube waltz of spacecraft in flight to the harrowing spacewalks, and of course, the Stargate sequence. But arguably the cleverest sequence of all is the last one you might expect. The Dawn of Man depicts an evolutionary tipping point of early human ancestors. For this sequence, Kubrick employed front projection on a scale never before seen. This technique involved projecting large format photographs onto a half-silvered beam splitter mirror set in front of the camera. This reflected the images onto a giant screen set at the end of the set behind the actors. The screen was composed of retroreflective material called Scotchlight, which bounces light directly back at its source. The result? The live set and the photographic backgrounds were combined on the spot, passing through the two-way mirror and into the camera lens. The technique is betrayed by the retinas of the leopard seen in 2 shots. Its eyes, like the Scotchlight screen, reflect the light from the projector. In fact, this sequence contains just one outdoor shot, the moment in which an ape throws a bone into the sky, which was filmed in a studio parking lot. Alfonso Cuarón's groundbreaking space thriller Gravity pushed the boundaries of visual effects to new heights. Released in 2013, this Space Odyssey took home 7 Academy Awards, including one for its visual effects. Key to the movie's success were its immersive long takes and the seamless integration of CGI. Cuarón originally thought to shoot the live-action scenes using actors in spacesuits filmed against green screen. However, the limitations of that technique led the crew to devise some more innovative solutions. Namely, the spacesuits proved too bulky and awkward. So the actors used placeholders and CGI suits were simply added in post-production. Moving actors as if in microgravity also turned out to be a difficult task. So, industrial robots were used to move the camera instead. Key to selling this illusion was the use of interactive lighting, which moved around the actors as the camera itself moved. The so-called light box was a structure shaped like a cube, tiled with LED panels that displayed images around the actors. This served as both a real-time visual reference and an interactive light source, allowing the actors to react to and interact with their non-existent surroundings. Pioneering filmmaker Fritz Lang's 1927 classic Metropolis is the urtext for the science fiction epic. As such, it employed some truly fantastic special effects for its depiction of a fractured futuristic society. One such effect is known as the Schuftan process, the invention of which is credited to German cinematographer Eugen Schuftan. This early cinematic technique employed mirrors with strategically placed holes in the reflective surface. It was used to combine live-action actors with backgrounds or miniatures set perpendicular to the camera axis. This allowed the camera to capture both the reflected image and the live action, creating a seamless integration of real actors and artificial elements. Lang employed this process throughout Metropolis. The scale of such vistas effectively gives away the fact that they're made using special effects. But there are a few more intimate scenes that employ these effects on a much more subtle level. One such instance is when the mad Rotwang stands before a giant bust of his dead love, Hel. The crew built only the neck of the bust. The head itself was a 2-foot-tall model added via the Schuftan process. Christopher Reeve's physicality does a lot to sell the illusion of Superman in flight, but his talent alone couldn't deliver on that iconic advertising promise. Many techniques were used to get Superman airborne in 1978's Superman the movie. A seesaw raised and lowered Reeve on takeoffs and landings. Sometimes he'd grab a trapeze bar just out of camera view in order to be lifted off the ground. On the effects side, they suspended both dolls and actors on wires, and Reeve was often filmed against blue screen and matted into separately filmed backgrounds. But the primary technique for Superman in flight was Zoran Perisic's so-called Zoptic system. Zoptics was a direct descendant of the front projection process Perisic worked with on 2001: A Space Odyssey. He made 3 significant updates here, however. The first was using motion picture film instead of slides for the projected backgrounds. Second was a movable rig that carried the projector, beam splitter, and camera together as a unified package. Third was the decision to equip the projector and the camera with synchronized zoom lenses. This allowed the camera to move towards and away from the actors without the background image changing size. Interestingly, a simplified variation of the beam splitter technique made the Kryptonian costumes light up. The film's designers made these robes out of Scotchlight, but they used the light instead of a projector to make them glow. Deservedly, Superman's effects team took home a Special Achievement Academy Award in 1979 for their work on the movie. Donald Gennaro's exit from the original Jurassic Park is simultaneously terrifying, humiliating, and hilarious.
Hold on to your butts.
The T-Rex in Jurassic Park was depicted using a variety of techniques, including 2 full-scale animatronic robots. One was 37 feet long, nose to tail, while a more detailed close-up version existed only from the chest up. Of course, these robotic Rexes were dangerous pieces of heavy equipment, and there was no way the production would risk having one close its hydraulically powered jaws around a real human being. For Gennaro's demise, the Rex is a fully CGI creation. Because the wind-blown plants and rain would betray any cuts, the decision was made to use a wire to yank a stuntman off the toilet. The Rex's head, with a CGI double for Gennaro in its mouth, largely obscured the stuntman's exit. This required only a tiny bit of cleanup to make the effect seamless. Star Wars movies have always been renowned for their groundbreaking special effects, and the franchise's history is essentially the story of the evolution of effects work from the 1970s to the modern era. And of course, one of the most famous effects in Star Wars is the lightsaber. In the original film, the glowing blades of the lightsabers were achieved live. Each blade was a rotating rod covered with Scotchlite, and VFX artists added color and extra sizzle in post-production. The only problem? The motors made these sabers unwieldy, and the beam splitter limited their ability to move. For The Empire Strikes Back, retroreflective material gave way to simple rods, with all the light simply added in post. In the prequel trilogy, painted narrow tubes served as blades, and in the sequel trilogy, electroluminescent material illuminated clear tubes. This provided interactive in-camera lighting, especially in dark scenes, making for much more atmospheric lightsaber duels. If you think motion capture is a new technology, think again. Early techniques such as rotoscoping helped kick off this kind of tech. But a pivotal moment in its evolution occurred in 1967, when Lee Harrison III put a dancer into an armature of Tinker Toys and potentiometers. This first data suit controlled a cartoon character using a human performer, and the same tech created the first mocap dancer. Of course, capturing coarse movement isn't necessarily enough. A mocap actor has to be able to project her performance through layers of digital abstraction, just as actors have to act through heavy makeup. Andy Serkis is a renowned actor and motion capture pioneer, known for his exceptional work in bringing digital characters to life. He came to the fore as Gollum in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, demonstrating a true expertise in conveying subtle emotions and physicality using mocap technology. Any behind-the-scenes video of Serkis acting in his gear demonstrates how much of his performance comes through on screen, despite how silly he might look in a mocap suit with dots all over his face. His 3 performances as Caesar in the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy say it all. The signature special effect of the Matrix series is what the first film's script calls bullet time. While the Wachowskis certainly popularized this technique with the Matrix, they didn't actually invent it. The time-slice camera was first devised in 1980 by Tim McMillan, who produced a number of films using it. Perhaps the first commercial use of the technique, albeit in crude form, was Accept's 1985 music video Midnight Mover, in which the viewpoint spins around the band at different rates. Whoa. In the 90s, TV commercials got into the act, notably the Gap Khaki Swing ad in 1998. Time Slice featured briefly in other movies of the time such as Lost in Space and Wing Commander. The Time Slice's brilliance was its ability to photograph multiple viewpoints either simultaneously or sequentially at various rates. The result? The camera viewpoint moves around a scene that's either in frozen or slowed time, but the Matrix pushed the effect to another level, employing up to 99 cameras to allow the viewpoint to smoothly swing around the actors involved. Early in the development of Tron, production artist Andrew Probert suggested the equivalent of bullet time for the scene in which Flynn gets digitized, with his coffee suspended in the air as the camera circles around him. This idea got no traction, sadly, but Tron is still known as the first feature film to showcase CGI in more than just a scene or two. That said, Tron actually features only about 9 minutes of CGI. The rest of the computer world depicted in the movie is airbrushed artwork and animation effects. And while mocap existed in a fairly primitive form, the computers of the time weren't up to rendering the complex geometry of so many characters, let alone making them relatable. CGI was rationed for the things only it could do. The bulk of the digital world scenes were filmed with actors in white costumes with black details against either black backgrounds or on crude sets painted with white detailing. Each frame was printed to large high-contrast Codolith animation cells, with hand-rotoscoped color separation mats, all of which were shot on animation stands and composited together. The result was certainly eye-popping, but the manual work required was off the charts. Just check out how many names are featured in the end credits. The labor-intensive process and advances in technology meant Tron was a one-of-a-kind production for its time. David Lynch's Dune did not exactly mark a milestone in the history of visual effects. The movie's effects range from the impressively realistic to the truly abysmal.
Now, guard yourself from truth.
For example, those iconic sandworms are only convincing in a couple of moments, and most of the shots of aircraft and spacecraft are clunky at best. One place in which Dune excels, however, is in its use of the ageless hanging miniature technique, or cutting piece. This method uses a small-scale model, which is suspended between the camera and a live-action set beyond it. The 1925 film Ben-Hur famously employed this effect. While the movie features the base of a full-size arena, the higher seating level is a simple miniature. To realize the palace at Arakeen, the Dune crew placed actors on a staircase set in the parking lot of Estadio Azteca Stadium in Mexico City. For a broad establishing shot, a large platform 1,000 feet away held a miniature of the city, cliffs, and wall. They placed the camera 16 feet from the model, which was designed with a gap through which the stairs and crowd were visible. The same technique was used to place the Atreides at the foot of their space cruiser and depict invading Sardaukar troops rushing out from a Harkonnen ship.
From riding banshees to giant airships fighting wildlife, Avatar's most exciting moments weren't so visually stunning before CGI. Motion capture technology is often used in fantasy and science fiction films to capture the essence of different creatures. Funny enough, Jar Jar Binks in 1999's Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, was actually the first motion capture character ever, although most movie fans would rather forget that fact. Avatar was unique because it featured a cast that was almost entirely made up of motion capture performers. Unsurprisingly, this did not make it an easier film to shoot. It's pretty challenging to act in front of a green screen, where you have no idea what you are supposed to be looking at. Some actors had no idea of what they would look like in their avatar bodies until well into the film's production.
This is great.
James Cameron updated the motion capture technology in Avatar so that the characters' expressions would feel more naturalistic. He explained, "We have almost as many muscles in just our face as we have in the entire rest of our body, so the systems previously that we used were good at capturing body performance. This attention to detail captures moments of raw emotion, such as when Jake wakes up in his avatar body." Avatar is a science fiction spectacle, but it is also a film with an important theme of environmentalism and colonization. After experiencing the culture of the Na'vi, Jake begins to question if his planet's military goals are justified. They are outsiders on Pandora, and they have no right to take control of the territory that the Na'vi live in. While humans would rather mine Pandora for its resources, the Na'vi respect the natural wildlife on the planet. We see how Jake learns to trust the Na'vi after his experiences with the Thanator monster. When Jake is first exploring Pandora in his new body, he is attacked by a vicious carnivorous creature known as the Thanator. He is nearly killed by the fearsome beast and narrowly escapes by jumping down a waterfall. However, Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldana, shows him that these creatures are simply trying to protect their home. During the final battle, she bonds with the Thanator, and the creature helps attack Colonel Quaritch's mechanical suit. Although both scenes with Thanators are pretty exciting in the final film, they weren't nearly as thrilling on set. Instead of a vicious carnivore, Sam Worthington and Saldana had to act alongside a CGI creature that they couldn't see.
Oh yeah, who's bad?
Avatar has certainly inspired a passionate fan base, but more general audience members might not have the same interest in the anatomy of the Na'vi. The somewhat infamous love scene between Jake and Neytiri is rather tender and sweet in the finished film, but dedicated fans have managed to learn more about Na'vi intimacy thanks to a little bit of extra research. James Cameron's original screenplay describes how Neytiri and Jake's tendrils intertwine, producing, quote, gentle undulations. In the theatrical cut, they only share a kiss. While some fans may speculate about what other imagery Cameron cut from the film, there have been several extended cuts of the film released, which show details more true to the original script. Even if the theatrical cut of the film does its best to convey the intimacy of the moment, it wasn't quite as romantic on set. Trying to spend time with someone you love isn't quite as romantic when you're wearing a motion capture suit. Sigourney Weaver is one of the most iconic science fiction stars of all time. Her performance as Ellen Ripley in 1979's Alien modernized the concept of the final girl within the context of a sci-fi adventure. It was actually James Cameron who helped turn Weaver into the action star that she is today when he directed 1986's Aliens. Weaver reunited with Cameron to play Dr. Grace Augustine in Avatar. One of the more interesting characters in the film, Grace is the head of the Avatar program, who begins to have suspicions about her employers. She becomes concerned that if Pandora's home tree is destroyed, it could fundamentally damage the ecosystem of the planet. Weaver was intrigued by the use of performance capture technology in the film. Speaking of motion capture, she said, "It's much more actor-centric if you do it the James Cameron way." Grace's enthusiasm about her new body reflects Weaver's excitement on set. Ever since the film's release, Avatar has been compared to Kevin Costner's historical epic Dances with Wolves. Both focus on the story of an outsider who gets accepted within tribal culture and learns to stand up against colonization. James Cameron has approved of the comparisons and said that both stories clash civilizations or cultures. Cameron looked at real historical accounts of the European colonization of North America when he was designing the look of Pandora. One scene, which was later cut from the theatrical release, was meant to emulate the beauty of tribal customs. 4 actors performed an actual dance routine that Cameron had choreographed. Although these characters are only briefly featured, they embody the spirit of the Na'vi. However, the film has attracted some criticism for the way that Cameron characterizes indigenous people, with some noting that the film perpetrates the white messiah complex that has become a sad trope in popular culture. Of all the incredible sequences in Avatar, James Cameron says that the scene where Jake and Neytiri fly together on the winged banshee creatures is actually his favorite moment. It was one of the more complex aspects to film, with mounted rigs built for the actors to ride, and Cameron piloting a model to simulate movement. The results are wondrous. Although he had some anxieties about living in a new body, Jake gains confidence as he rides on the back of the dragon-like beast. Learning to pilot these aerial predators is a sacred custom within the Na'vi culture. Jake has to earn his place within the tribe by breaking in a wild banshee and taming it, proving his merit as a hunter.
You're ready.
James Cameron developed a complex ecosystem for Pandora. Within the Na'vi culture, trees play a very pivotal role. Neytiri and her tribe live in a home tree that is large enough to house them all. Unfortunately, the home tree is also on top of a massive source of unobtainium, attracting the attention of military forces that want to rob the planet of its natural resources. Destroying the home tree could spell doom for Neytiri's people. The Tree of Souls allows some characters to transfer their consciousness. Jake, along with Neytiri's mother, Moat, attempts to revive Grace by bringing her to the Tree of Souls, but she dies before they can save her. Before their love scene, Neytiri shows Jake how she can connect with the Tree of Voices via her tendrils. The glowing, gorgeous trees weren't quite as spectacular on set, however. The actors really had to suspend disbelief, even if that meant being in awe of a few black strings hanging from above. Likewise, when the Na'vi take Jake to the home tree for the first time on set, the magnificent tree is non-existent. The actors ride around a wide-open space, which is much less visually stimulating. Stephen Lang gives one of the strongest performances of his career in Avatar as Colonel Quaritch, the fearsome leader of the Resources Development Administration forces. Quaritch could care less about the damage being done to Pandora's wildlife, and he's willing to strip the planet of its resources so that he can develop missile technology. Lang says that the film's relevant political subtext is what attracted him to the role. When asked what he thought about fans that agreed with Quaritch, he said, "People respond to leaders no matter what their moral stance may be. We see a lot of evidence of that in our recent political climate in the United States."
The enemy is out there, and they are very powerful.
During the final standoff between Quaritch's forces and the Na'vi, the RDA plane is shot down. Quaritch uses an amp suit to hunt down Jake. Lang acted in an actual rig suit that was designed for the film and placed in front of a green screen background. The look may be less intimidating, but that just adds to the impressive performance Lang was able to give. Lang definitely had to do some challenging stunts in the first Avatar, but he says that the upcoming sequels are even more intense. Militarism and industrialism are two of the most important themes in Avatar. These also happen to be recurring concepts within James Cameron's works. Both the Terminator and its sequel, Terminator 2: Judgment Day, examine the dangerous consequences of putting too much faith in technology. In Avatar, Cameron shows how a primitive tribal species like the Na'vi can defeat a powerful military-industrial organization like the RDA. However, the RDA certainly does not go down without a fight. As detailed in The Art of Avatar, James Cameron's epic adventure, the design team developed a complex infrastructure for the firepower in the evil company's arsenal. The RDA utilizes several different vehicles in Avatar. The Valkyrie SSTO TAV-37 B-class shuttlecrafts are utilized to harvest and transport natural gas from the Pandoran surface. Larger attack vehicles, such as the C-21 Dragon assault ships, the Aerospatiale SA-2 Samsons, and the AT-99 gunships, are almost exclusively used in combat. These ships indicate that the RDA did not come to Pandora with any peaceful intentions. So how did Cameron and his team simulate flight on set? It wasn't nearly as high-tech as what it looks like in the finished film. Actors like Sam Worthington and Joel David Moore appeared on a rig, while they were blasted by fans. Amidst the final battle, the Na'vi are overwhelmed by the technological forces of the RDA, forced to flee after Laz Alonso's Sute and Michelle Rodriguez's Trudy Chacon are killed amidst the conflict. However, Jake had made a special Na'vi prayer to the Tree of Souls to ask for help. In what is perhaps no coincidence, the native Pandoran wildlife joins the attack, helping the Na'vi defend their home. Perhaps they are being territorial, but Neytiri believes it is because the mother goddess, Ewa, has heard Jake's pleas.
Jake, Ewa has heard you.
Even though these creatures were completely digital, James Cameron wanted to design a complex Pandoran ecosystem so that the audience could connect with the different creatures. Despite the fact that the actors would not interact with live animals on set, Cameron said that the film required him to invent a whole new alien culture and language. According to creature creator Wayne Barlow, the mammalian creatures were inspired by skates and manta rays. He added, "Sea life motifs were prevalent in my thoughts at the time. Their lines informed everything from wings to head profiles." Jake forms a spiritual connection with the goddess Ewa during his brave defense of the home tree. He proves that he has completely shed his human body and has now adjusted to the Na'vi culture. In order to make this process official, Jake attends a special Na'vi ceremony held in the Tree of Souls during the final scene of the film. The tree allows Jake to permanently transfer his consciousness to his Na'vi body. When he opens his eyes, it signifies that the process was successful. When he reflected on the film's legacy, James Cameron said that even though this scene was a digital creation, it embodies the emotional journey that the audience goes on in the theater. He explained, "As our lives progress, we come more and more away from nature. Society at large, anywhere in the world, is suffering from a nature deficit disorder of some kind, to some degree. The movie puts us back into that childlike wonder about nature, and about nature's grandeur and complexity and beauty."
James Cameron has a deep passion for aquatic exploration. His interest in underwater adventure has led him to embark on several groundbreaking expeditions, including the first solo descent into the Mariana Trench, to the ocean's deepest known point. Of course, this interest has also inspired his filmmaking. Both The Abyss and Titanic emerged from his love for the sea. Since most of the world of Pandora is created virtually for the Avatar movies, you might think the crew would mocap all the underwater action dry for wet. But this is James Cameron we're talking about. Instead, Cameron insisted the characters should move believably in all environments. This required mocap to be performed in water tanks. To make this possible, the cast had to train extensively to control their breathing so their performances could be captured underwater. The top actor in this regard was apparently Kate Winslet, who at one point held her breath for an incredible 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
It was 7:15.
Come on!